Well, thank you all for coming back. This sabbatical that I took was not planned. It just kind of spontaneously arose. And returning to teaching is not planned. Again, it feels somewhat spontaneous. But it felt necessary for a lot of reasons. One of them is that it gives all of you an opportunity to chart your own course, to rely on your own inner self or outer self, to appreciate the value of inner directed life. I've heard from a number of you who have moved on to other teachers, and I have zero problem with that. I'm not about, excuse me, collecting students. I'm about sitting with people I love. Anyone who wants to sit and be part of that is totally welcome. I am nothing but grateful for all of you, and I really do feel a kind of timeless connection. So whether we actually sit on Sunday mornings regularly or not seems independent of my needs. What flows into the class is flowing all the time. It's not flowing from me. I am kind of a channel in a way. I'm like a movie you watch and makes you feel good or not, or whatever, but you don't need a movie to feel good. You just can go to that for occasional, whatever you want to call it, entertainment, reinforcement, emotional connection. But I'm happy to be here, and I will be back for this, however long it lasts. But it will not be quite as regular, perhaps, as before, particularly this summer, because there are a lot of events happening on weekends coming up. So you'll get my invitation on Fridays, usually before the weekend that I will teach, and hopefully that will be enough in terms of alerting you to what's coming. The last 6 months have been very interesting, obviously, for all of us. In my own life, Blanche and I are really well. Blanche had COVID, as you know, and is symptom-free and really recovering and really wonderful. And for me, I think you all know this, my partnership with Blanche is in a way the definition of my life. Without her, I don't know how this would all happen. Meeting Rudy, of course, was another defining factor. Having children and then grandchildren are the, in a wonderful way, completions. Things are going well for my family. If you care to know, my son, Ari, who's been living in Orlando, working at the most difficult job, has left that job. I will not describe the circumstances, but the wonderful part of Orlando is that he met this wonderful woman from Turkey. And they are now moving to Washington, D.C., where he had been before, for a new job that he's taking and a life together, I hope, with, her name is Burju. She is spectacular. She's getting her doctorate in English, majoring in utopian and dystopian literature, which I find completely fascinating. Joshua is working on video games, as you probably remember, for a very long time, and just won a daytime Emmy for one of his games with Bear Grylls, who takes people on these adventures into God knows what difficult territories, but they created a virtual game that seems to have got a lot of attention. So kind of wonderful. My grandchildren are off to camp today, and for a month. Talia for a month, Eli for 2 weeks, and then they're going to Portugal for a month. So we're not going to have a lot of time together, and that's heartbreaking for me. But any of you who have grandchildren or imagine that life know how fulfilling that is. So that's personal. non-personal. Anybody who watches the news, and I don't totally recommend that, is aware that the world is going through some powerful transformative changes. Mostly, if we were to rate them, they would be kind of movement into darkness. Anyone who is familiar with the cycles of world events knows that there's a yin-yang to it all. It goes into light, it goes into darkness, it oscillates. Most of us who were alive for the last, I'm almost 80 years old, have been in a period of enormous light, kind of beauty. And it's now switching into something much more politically and environmentally different and in a way toxic. I don't know that we need to talk about that other than the environmental toxicity in our lives for many people finds its way into our personal being. And many of us don't identify properly between the outer and the inner, and we just take it all and we make it ours. And so one of the great things about spiritual practice, a quietude, a sitting inside, a withdrawing into the core, is that you're not totally focused on the outer. The outer is very compelling. Obviously, we all are drawn to it. We come into this world, we spend a lot of time involved in it. And only if you're really lucky and blessed do you find that you want to go inward and discover what I call the balance between the inner and the outer. Many, many people I know are not at all aware of balance or the possibility of an inner being. It's all about the outer life, which causes a lot of problems because the outer life is very transitory. It's very impermanent, as we all know. It will end for everybody and not always pleasantly. The journey into old age, which Blanche and I are moving into with a tiny bit of grace, but also with all the levels of discomfort that come along with it, have a great deal to teach us about the outer world and about the power of discomfort and pain and loss and all of the things that go along with getting old. And it's something I feel probably over the course of however much longer I teach, I will talk about, with the idea that Rudy said, spiritual life is a lifelong journey. It's for your whole life. And I have to tell you, the ending of life, the final aging period, is where it really comes into focus. If you've ever needed a spiritual life, trust me, this is where you need it. You need the balance. You need to move into that which is not changeable, if you will, that which has a certain kind of infinite and eternal connectivity. Now, you may believe or not believe in that, but if you dive deep enough into your psyche, into your inner space, you will have, if nothing else, intimations of immortality. There is something remarkable inside us. It's the only truth I live with. It is the inner being that allows the outer to flourish, and it also allows the outer ultimately to disintegrate and go away without you losing the core truth of who you are. You can believe that or not believe that. A lot of people go to the idea of faith as a way of accepting or believing things. The great thing about a spiritual journey inward is you move beyond faith into touching truth. You will have moments where you will know with absolute certainty that you are in touch with an uprising, illuminating energy that is part of your core being. To find that out, to know that, to touch it, even if it doesn't permeate every day of your life, but even if you just keep getting little grace notes of that truth, you will find a way of navigating a world that is becoming increasingly complex and perhaps not to your taste. I've ended up turning off the news. I still look at headlines. I get the New York Times and I see the Washington Post. And so I get a pretty clear picture of stuff I don't like to look at. and it affects me. And I have to acknowledge, nothing that you don't already know, that I am deeply human, that I see things. I'm a writer. I do narrative fiction and movies, or have. And one of the incredible things about narrative fiction is when you write it, you create these foreshadowings in your writing that will allow you to get an idea of where things are going in later acts, usually 3 acts. And you get this feeling of what is going to come, and you, in a way, emotionally prepare for it. I think anyone who's looking at the world today sees foreshadowing. And you see things that do not look like the world you want to enter. And I definitely started to get very thrown by the dramatist in myself that was unleashing, if you will, a concern and even a fear about how is this all going to play out. Partly for me and my wife, partly for my children, and really in a deep way for my grandchildren. And I will include all of you in that. There was a part of me that thought, boy, oh boy, if we could just buy a big hotel somewhere in Canada and all move in together, that would be great. Then we wouldn't have to worry about the larger world. But as any of you know, there's no escaping reality. There's no escaping the larger picture. So I really have gone through a lot of internalizing of how do I deal with some of the foreshadowing that shows me images of things I don't want to see. Well, 2 things. One, I started watching a TV show. I recommend it and don't recommend it simultaneously, called A French Village, which is essentially a French program about the Nazis occupying a small village in France over a period of 72 episodes. So this is massive, and I'm only halfway through. But it is a depiction in a way of how life unfolds and devolves, really, when some dark force comes into it. Fascinating, profoundly disturbing. I don't want to go there, but it appears to be coming forward. So I'm looking at that. So what I was brought back to, which really proved to be very valuable, was the first thing I read after my LSD trip in 1965. And it's called the Bhagavad Gita, which is the Hindu song of God, part of the Upanishads. And it is a really interesting story for those of you who haven't read it or who haven't read it in a long time. There's a character central to it called Arjun. He is a warrior. He's on a battlefield, and he is facing his entire half of his family, which is a civil war that he is about to engage in and does not want to fight. And he has his chariot on the battlefield, and he's sitting there, and he is saying, I cannot move forward. He doesn't know what to do. And it just so happens, this charioteer is Krishna. Krishna, who is a manifested form of Godhead. And Krishna says, you have to fight. You have to move forward. You may not want to engage your family. You may not want to kill cousins and uncles and people, but this is your karmic requirement. And you are here, and he guides him into, 1, how to engage your life with great consciousness, great purpose, great effectiveness, and basically how to look at the larger picture, which is both inner and outer, in which all of this plays out as Maya, as a kind of, if you will, movie that we are in as characters. And we are in this movie not to hide from it, not to disengage it, not to wish it were otherwise, not to go into some other space, but to engage it in the best way we can. And each of you has to figure out what is the best way you can engage the world that's unfolding. Yes, you can move away. Yes, you can hide. I'm not going to pass judgment on any of that because I'm human and have thought about it as well. But sometimes the choices are not available to you. And sometimes, like the poor people in this French village who are unable to go anywhere, you live out a life in which your character reveals itself in the most profound circumstances. People who are deeply good at heart struggle, but find a way. People who are easily corrupted are quickly corrupted when circumstances happen. The soul of your being, the inner nature of your being, is challenged by the outer world. And this is not uncommon in the history of our planet, in the history of the human species. It is cyclical. It goes like this. And even within the periods of light and joy, it's still there. So all of us are facing the moment of Arjun on the chariot, what to do, how to go forward, how to live. I cannot give you answers, but I will tell you this. It really helps to go inside, to find balance, to find harmony, to find yourself. And that self is not limited to an ego being. It is something vast. And if you don't believe me, go deeper. And as you go deeper and deeper and deeper into your core self, you will see the movie, if you will, that is playing on the screen of manifested existence. And you will see who you are in the midst of that. That is, in a way, the gift of the Bhagavad Gita, because it teaches you all about how to become aware, conscious knowledge, how to go into the inner world where you will be able to look at life more completely. And it also teaches you about how to be in the world. I will say this about Rudy. Excuse me. He was, in a fascinating way, outer directed. And he always said, you can't let go of that which you haven't had. So he pushed me, particularly, and probably many others, to have the life I wanted and was dreaming of. In that case, it was a life in either theater or film. And he pushed me in a lot of ways, one of which was even that he wrote songs for a musical and told me to write the book. I don't think he cared at all whether the musical ever got done. He wanted me to do the work, the writing. He kind of got me back into the world of creation. And in a way, my entire life, the manifested life, the creation of my life, the successes of my life come from Rudy saying, do it. Because the worst thing is not doing it. Not doing it leaves you regretting the thing you didn't do. Whereas at least if you do it and it didn't turn out well, you may go, oh, well, but you don't regret lacking in the effort trying. So doing your life, living your life well, doing what's in front of you well, doing it with love and consciousness and clarity is really important. And if you can do that, you will be like Arjun on the battlefield. You will know this is what's in front of you. This is what you have to do. Whatever life brings you, your job is to do it brilliantly, to do it effectively. And we are all in the same boat on that. I don't know what's coming exactly. Surprises happen all the time. But there are, dark clouds on the horizon, and astrologer friends of mine have painted difficult pictures. And I'm looking at it and going, yikes, what can I do? And the thing I can do is do my best day by day. It may be a big effort, maybe communicating or trying to communicate with lots of people. I've started writing my biography. I had begun to do that. You may know that by giving long talks with Joe Madry, one of my friends and students in Los Angeles. And Joe took it all down and then put it into a work. That was a really interesting work about, if you will, my spiritual life and my movie life. And then a friend of Joshua's, Paul Cronin, heard about it, asked Josh to see a copy, which Josh had. He read it, called me, came over to my house and said, I got to talk to you. Excuse me. He said, Bruce, this is an important work. There was a period in Hollywood called the New Hollywood. And I guess he tried to persuade me I was part of that. In a way, I was always a kind of footnote in that period. I even think that may be the title of the book, Footnote. I had a lot of friends who went on to become very successful in Hollywood. I had a good ride, but not, I was not a household name. But that ride was really important. And he said, you've got to write your book. So I have decided to now write this book. What it means, I have no idea, but it gets me to focus every day, and work forward and have purpose in the day. I tell you that because without that, and until I started writing it, my days were kind of vague and very pandemic-like in a way, just looking around, going for walks, trying to kind of be, which was fine. And I go for these long walks where I think I've described to you, I talk to God. And I have said this to you before. It's great to talk to God because everyone thinks you're talking to somebody on the phone and nobody knows that you're trying to send these messages into something infinite and great. But it's a very wonderful thing to sit and talk to something greater. Whatever you do, however you define that greatness, whether you see it as personal, impersonal, as even not even there. Some of you have no desire to think of it as a creator or a personalized being. But for me, Rudy used to call it the guys upstairs. I just talk to them. And that conversation is very, very helpful. And I love to do that. And I get feedback all the time, which basically says, put one foot in front of another and keep going. So that's really what I'm doing. It also says something that I've said to you many times, which I think is very important. It says, it's not about you. And I cannot tell you how important that is. We all think it's important that that it be about us and that we feel good and we have and we get and we do. And again, Rudy said, do what you need to do so you can get past, regrets, if you will. But try to think about others. Try to put others first wherever possible. Try to make yourself available to the world. It is very liberating, among other things. It is a delicious, wonderful way to live. And that may be the biggest guiding post here. Surrender deeply, think of others. And then to put it into the terms that I was using most when I stopped teaching regularly about 6 months ago, the clearest lesson I have about all of what we're doing and who we are, every one of us, is be a good person. Be nice, be kind. Allow this to manifest not just as a state of quietude, but as a state of action. Be a good person in the world. Give yourself over to the world and to others. I'm telling you, if you do that, you will engage whatever comes up in front of you from the right place in the right way. You will do in the world the right thing, and you will have a fulfilling life. And then you will discover, as I have been discovering, something really interesting starts to happen. And I call it evaporation. And I have found myself evaporating. Mostly mind, memory, thoughts, the idea of me as a physical being, it just keeps evaporating. There's still a part of the being that is solid, of course, and functional, but less and less. And it's really an amazing thing to watch yourself just go off. And what remains is the gift. And I will tell you, you'll find that as you get older, if you're lucky, you will discover the thing that is still there is remarkable. I've also learned, interestingly, that I have always said there's this experience of presence and absence. And I have definitely known both of those arenas, and I often go from one to the other. And absence is painful. Presence is delightful. But the attachment to either of those is a source of suffering. Because you want to get out of the absence and you want to hold on to the presence. The other line I've just come up with, and it came into my head, which is really a good one for me, is neutral. There is a place that's just neutral. The car is not going forward, it's not going back, it's not engaged, it's just neutral. It's running, but it's neutral. I think one needs to look at that, not as a judgmental thing of saying, well, it should be going, it shouldn't be going. Much of life is a neutral experience. Learning to be neutral is a very quiet, simple state. And I'm finding myself, when I am there, not saying, oh my God, I'm missing this or missing that. I'm just neutral. I'm, in a way, fine. It's fine. So putting all this together, I think I really want to say, more than anything else, this spiritual journey we're on does not take you out of the human journey. It does not separate you from it. You do not find a place through your spiritual life that makes you better, superior, teacherly. It simply makes you real. It makes you honest. It makes you human. And if you can be that without trying to promote anything inauthentic, just be authentically who you are. Be present or neutral, even absent, but be what is. Don't try to be something else. Don't try to reach for this stress-free moment or this thing that will give you bliss and pleasure, because who is asking for that? Who is wanting that? That is the core issue. If anybody here has experienced the idea of an awakening or non-dualistic self, you know you are not an ego and the vastness of being. You are a singular reality. That singular reality encompasses the human and the divine. That's what you are. That's what we are collectively. If you know that, if you feel that, you live this life as it unfolds and do it authentically, openly, as much as you can, lovingly, as much as you can, staying as a nice, good, kind person, no matter what. If you want real spiritual practice, be kind is the issue. If you can be kind when everything in you wants not to be kind, you will find the work that comes in really opening yourself up to the infinite availability of kindness. It's at the core of the human experience, truly. Being a nice person is much bigger and much more cosmically ordained than you can imagine. So that kind of gets us up to now. And where we go from here, you know, I have no idea. But if we hold hands, if we're together, if we reach out, if we have each other to connect to, if you have others to connect to, if you can become the voice of and the engine of goodness and kindness in the world, you'll be doing a great favor to life. And that's what will happen. And hopefully we'll continue this now for as long as this old body keeps going. It certainly feels its age. And it's great to watch how it unfolds. And I really will talk about that as it happens. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And now, if any of you have questions, you'll have to turn your unmute button on. You know, raise your hand maybe. I'm happy to try to answer questions if you have them. This is an old pattern. Okay, Janice.
I just wanted to ask, Bruce, it's so great to have you back. And will this, what you just did, be on YouTube, or will it be on your website? YouTube. YouTube.
It'll be on YouTube, and all of these talks are being transcribed. God knows why, but they're rough transcriptions. But we must have like 3,000 or 4,000 pages of transcription. If nothing else, they may go on the website at some point or somewhere, just so people who can't hear, which is starting to be more and more people, can read them, and to whatever degree they're meaningful. I don't know. They're very much arising as they happen. I don't know whether they're meant for permanent display, but yes, this will be online. According, if Arkady puts it online today, it'll be there by tonight. Marty, was that you? No, okay. Anybody else? Yes, okay. Well, listen, thank you all for being here. It's great to see you. I'm so grateful that anybody showed up. I didn't really know what to expect. So again, I'm going to alternate these usually, but not with any particular format. So you'll hear from me the next time I'm going to do a California class, but you can always go online and see if there's talk from the previous week and listen to it if you want. And we'll sit together the next time that happens. Thank you all for showing up. Much love to everybody.